Hi guys, Jay Smith here. Welcome to the AskGolfNut channel. So this is kind of a part 2 to a video that I done not so long ago, but I'm still getting many questions and comments about what golf clubs do I need to buy. I'm a 14 handicapper, I'm a 28 handicapper, I need to look at a certain type of iron, what it will be and stuff like that. So there seems to be still a lot of, well, there's so much choice out there when it comes to manufacturers. You've got, let's just have a look, I've got a list down here. They've got Titleist, Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, Cobra, Mizuno, Wilson, Strixon, Cleveland. There are so many. Again, this is before you go to direct-to-consumer brands, and it just gets confusing as to how much choice is out there. And there are now literally hundreds of options for people to look through. There's so many reviews and so many different things out there that it's not surprising that people get a little bit confused as to what to look at. Now, with all this choice, how do you even decide what golf clubs you should be looking at? So you, down the lens, you're the golfer in question, you're going to know, hopefully, what you bring to the table, your own unique requirements and your own unique skills within the game. How fast do you swing? How much of the face do you use when it comes to irons? Do you hit the middle all the time, or do you go around the face quite a bit? Is there any requirements for peak heights or extra, that kind of idea? So I've made a chart. Everyone loves a chart. And in this chart allows you to better understand, or it kind of narrows down your choices as long as you know what you bring. So let's go have a look. When it comes to the types of iron design required, now we've got player's blade, player's cavity, player's distance, game improvement, and high launch game improvement irons. And that basically would say, let's say Mizuno's range, you've got the player's blade, could be the Pro 221 and the JPX 923 Tour possibly. You've got the player's cavity being the Pro 223 and then also possibly the JPX 923 Tour that blends. Player's distance, that's the Pro 225 being a hollow bodied head, and possibly also the JPX 923 Forge, because the Forge is a bit of a bridging golf club. Game improvement goes to the JPX 923 Hot Metal and Hot Metal Pro. And of course, the high launch game improvement is the JPX 923 Hot Metal High Launch. Now, not all manufacturers make high launch options. More and more manufacturers are making the high launch options, and they're becoming more and more popular because they do give a huge benefit to very slow swing speed players. Ping make it in the G430 HL. You could argue that TaylorMade make their Stealth HD, their hybrid looking iron. That will do a similar job just purely because of the design of a hybrid head over an iron, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. So let's go have a look at it quickly, and then you can answer these questions yourself live as we're doing this as such. What is your club head speed? Is it fast? Is it medium? Is it medium to fast? Is it medium slow? Is it, you kind of get the idea. So if you're a fast swing speed player, generally speaking, let's say me, I'm 92 miles an hour with a 7-iron. I'm not super fast, but I'm decent speed. I play blades. Why? Because I like a certain amount of distance, or a reasonable distance of between the lofts of the golf clubs. So there's 4 degrees, generally speaking, with the blades, and because of my speed, that equates to around about 12 yards per golf club. If I was to get my speed and put it into the game improvement area of where you're talking about, some game improvement irons, 7-irons are 27 or so degrees, I'm hitting my 7-iron now, rather than 164 yards of carry, will be 190 something, if not 200. Now, you are either going to have 1,000,000,001 wedges, or more so what actually happens is the loft gaps, which mean they're bigger on game improvement irons, which means the distance between each club becomes unmanageable for me. So I like having sensible loft gaps. Now, with my speed, I could also get away with a high launch game improvement iron if I didn't strike it very well. That's a different part of the thing, but that's why you've got on the player's blade and also on the high launch game improvement very slow, very low speed, or fast, because I will get into that one, but yeah, you can do with both. So the next one, You can see when it comes to, say, medium speed, you can have your player's distance when it comes to the Pro 225 or the JPX 923 Forge with a moderate amount of loft, modern lofted we'll call it, and then game improvement. If you've got a medium swing speed, you need help with distance, that's what that's for, and then you've got medium fast, you kind of get the whole transition of it. Next one's down to strike. How much forgiveness do you need? And are you someone who uses all the face, or are you someone who hits the middle a lot? Not every time, no one's a robot, but if you're someone who hits the middle a lot, then your choices are different to the people that hit all around the face. And so, if you've got a very, very good quality of strike, you could play a blade. And then if you've got a fast swing, you could also then use a blade. That's what kind of the chart goes. If your quality of strike is okay, then you're quite happy to have a player's distance iron, because the player's distance iron has got assistance. So they're normally hollow bodied, or they've got a technology inside them to resist against the odd miss hit, should we call it, and they do it very, very well. And then if your strike is poor, that's what the game improvement iron is for, because they're ultimately just very, very good at that. And then again, if your strike is poor, you need lots of forgiveness, you could also go for the high launch game improvement as well. But depending on your speed, then that will then change your requirement for either game improvement or high launch game improvement. You kind of get now how the chart is working. So after that one comes initial launch, or the peak height required. Now, if you've got a very, very good peak height, then again, blades are fine. Or also when it comes to cavity, because apart from loft, which players cavity and players blades have got more traditional loft, after loft there's no help in peak height, in launch angle, because of the lack of tech, or the very closer lack of tech, especially in a blade. But the centre of gravity is nowhere near as low and as far back as it is when it comes to game improvement iron. You have to do most of the work. So your peak height, your launch angle is much so what you're doing, rather than the artificial amount that you'll get from a game improvement iron in terms of help. And then if you've got a medium amount, you're fine. You don't need a bucket ton of help when it comes to peak heights, etc. You can have a player's distance iron, again, relative to speed. But then as your ability to hit the golf ball higher or anything else like that, especially when it comes to if you're someone who hits the golf ball very low, then a high launch game improvement iron will work. If you're someone who hits the golf ball low, but then you have not got a fast swing at all, then that's where you go to the high launch. I would steer clear of game improvement irons or distance irons. Remember, the difference between the game improvement irons and the distance or the high launch irons is relatively small but massive. What I mean by that, they're generally speaking, they're very, very similar design of heads. It's just that the high launch ones have got the ultimate help in drawing down the center of gravity as low as possible, and also they are much more traditionally lofted, because at that speed loft is your friend, and then that's why the heads are designed that way, to give you as much help in launch with technology help, low further back CGs, springy faces, but also loft as well. So that's how that chart works. That gives you an understanding, depending on where you are, and if all different parts of that, then you can find out what kind of golf clubs you need. And all manufacturers make all different types, so this is not just saying obviously Mizuno's, let's pick on TaylorMade. You can say that, okay, you've got from blade all the way to high launch would be you've got obviously the TaylorMade blade, you've got then the P7MC with player's cavity, player's distance would be P790, P770 also with the player's cavity, that blends and blurs between them, but very, very similar technology within P770 and P790, it's just slightly different sizes of heads and loft and stuff like that. And then game improvement would be, yes, you've got the stealth, and then high launch game improvement, you have got the stealth HD or the hybrid head as such. And so, and you can put that to all different manufacturers. They'll all have their within ranges. Not all of them have the high launches, but you kind of get the idea. So the next part of the chart is just through the characteristics of the heads themselves and what's the difference in golf clubs and the range and how much difference does it actually make. So player's blade, you can see there, help with off-centre hits, big cross, no. A blade will not give you any help whatsoever when you deviate from the middle. So to use a blade, you need to be very, very close to the middle on average. Now, blades have become much more forgiving over time because of understanding when the center of gravity placement is, which used to be very much so towards the heel. Now making it much more middle, they do make it much more forgiving, but it's still a blade. Player's cavity, you kind of get a little bit more of a mix. It's not very forgiving, but it is much more forgiving than a blade. And then you can see the ticks get bigger. Player's distance iron, well, normally you've got tungsten filled, hollow heads. That idea, a bit more help from MOI, moment of inertia, resistance to twist, a little bit more forgiving. Game improvement irons, or distance irons, uber help when it comes to that. And then of course you've got high launch game improvement irons, give you the same help that a game improvement iron does, sometimes more because they're the biggest ones of the lot, but you've got more loft, and then loft will be then much more forgiving as well. So that's what the whole idea of the top one, where it comes to help with off-center hits. So you can choose what you need depending on what kind of golfer you are. Do you need an additional height? Because the blade's a big cross and it won't give you any additional height. When it comes to that in a player's cavity, you have to do the work. So the likes of the Pro 221, the JPX 923 Tour from Mizuno, they are blades and blurring on the lines of player's cavity, the Pro 223 as well. But the blades especially, you are not going to get any help with height at all. You have to do the work. Where it comes through good dynamic loft and good speed. Speed's key. When you go to a player's cavity, a true player's cavity, probably like the Pro 223, so it's got a little bit of help in it, no different to a i230, P7MC, Cobra CB stroke Cobra Tour, Shrixon ZX7, that kind of idea. You've got a little bit of help there, but you still mainly have to do most of the work getting the golf ball going up in the air. Player's distance, that's when you start getting a little bit more help from the super springy hollow head faces. That's when you start getting extra height just because the lower further back center of gravity, and the springy face will get the golf ball going on that slightly higher launch angle for longer because it springs off the face a bit more. And then you've got the game improvement irons. The game improvement irons, you can see there, are the super ones which help in lower further back CG again, and then springy faces. But bear in mind also with the game improvement irons, you've got to be careful, is the fact that generally speaking the game improvement irons are the most aggressively lofted, and so you've got to be careful depending on what loft of game improvement iron you're going to be testing, that it's not so cranked at a slower speed that the ball just doesn't go any further. That's where the high launch ones come in, because of all the help you're going to get from a game improvement iron trying to get the golf ball up in the air, but it's got also that high loft. So again, the high launch game improvement irons are possibly one of the best ideas manufacturers have come up with over the past couple of years, and I expect other brands to expand their range into high launch very, very soon. I really do. They are very, very good. Next one is, for the last one, is the increased ball speed. What golf clubs give you that increased ball speed? If you need it, do you need it or do you not? If you've got a fast swing and you do the work, a player's blade will not give you any help on that one. But so if you want increased speed, I wouldn't be going for a player's blade or even possibly a player's cavity, because you are not going to get that increased distance because the faces aren't springy enough. You've got to go to the player's distance irons, the game improvement irons, and of course the high launch game improvement irons for the full-on tech to give you that super springy face. So that, very much so, you've got three options on different charts for you to determine what kind of choices that you need to make, and then you can use that in a way to make choices. So if you know that you are a really, you are a slow swinging speed player, but you hit the golf ball fairly well, because you're really, really slow, it doesn't go very far. Well, that's quite easy. If you're really very, very slow, there's no point in going game improvement irons because they're distance orientated and you won't actually get any more functional distance from them. You can actually use a high launch game improvement iron. You don't have to worry about the forgiveness because you hit the middle anyway, but the speed that you give overrides everything else, and going to that with a super springy face and also the high launch characteristics will get that golf ball going up and as far as possible. So it doesn't matter if you're a a fast swing speed player, but then also hit the golf ball terribly, you can also use high launch because it's got traditionally or more traditional lofts. So you're not going to see massive loft gaps or distance gap between lofts. And so you can see that you can use that chart to make your decision making somewhat easier. Now, obviously, this list is not complete. It's not saying that you should take this as an encyclopedia for custom fitting going forward. And there's always a little bit of borrowing here and borrowing there, but this is a very good understanding if you were to go by this and then attribute each manufacturer's irons within that bracket of those golf clubs to give you a very, very good understanding of what kind of golf clubs within each manufacturer and all of their range, what you should be targeting your either custom fittings towards, or at the very least, if you're not going to have that opportunity when it comes to you buying off of eBay, Marketplace, or just normal websites, if you haven't got the ability to be able to be custom fit, that will give you a much better chance at focusing your buying choices on the right kind of golf club. So comment below, what do you think of this list? Obviously I could make a list which is massive, but for trying to make it as concise as possible, I've tried to condense it down as best as I possibly can do. Are you custom fit? Have you been custom fit? What do you think about custom fitting? Have you bought online, second hand? The whole idea, there's so many offers now when it comes to online of all the different options that manufacturers make. It is a minefield, and hopefully this here hopefully does make things a little bit easier to understand. Hope you liked the video. If you did, go on, thumbs up. YouTube likes it, so do I. Down there is a subscribe button. That's the most important button of the lot, and it's free, and if you could do that one, that's great for the channel, so thank you. And next to that is a bell icon. That's a notification bell. If you click that one, that will notify you next time I upload another video. So I hope you're well, and we'll see you again soon.